one of the most common misconceptions we hear is I've heard people say socialism failed everywhere it's ever been tried. I'm sure you've heard that before. Yeah. Communism and socialism, they only work on paper. Well, let's back up for a moment, right? 1917, Russia was an agrarian economy. No steel industry to speak of, no electricity. In the 1930s, with the 5-year plans, they rapidly industrialized. They became the world's leading steel-producing country. They eventually defeated the Nazis. They were the first country to enter outer space. Huge things were achieved with a socialist planned economy. Now, that doesn't mean everything was perfect. Obviously, there were a lot of things that were wrong and eventually played a role in leading to the Soviet Union's collapse. But if you look at China, China had no steel mills at the time of the revolution in 1949. Today, half of the steel in the world is produced in China's government-controlled steel industry, part of their socialist planned economy. If you look at, the world tourism industry, the world tourism industry is having a boom right now. Because, Chinese people whose parents and grandparents were illiterate peasants, people that were malnourished and lived in huts are now going on vacation to Paris and New York City and Australia. You really can't say that socialist economics has been a failure. You want to see a failure, go to countries in the third world where they've let these free market neoliberal institutions operate. Look what the World Bank has done for the people of Bangladesh. Look what the free market is doing for people in Colombia, right? There's poverty all over the world. We hear about people fleeing Cuba and trying to get to the United States. Well, every day people are fleeing Mexico, a free market economy that fully cooperates, privatizations. They privatize their oil. They've privatized everything. The drug cartels are running rampant. People are hungry. People are homeless. That's capitalism that people are fleeing from in Mexico. So there's a lot of confusion, and the way that we hear it is very loaded. I think people are often stuck in kind of a Cold War narrative. They don't quite understand the reality, but socialist planned economies have had tremendous results across the world. And I've visited different countries around the world, and I've seen the results of centrally planned economies. And the reality is that there have been great achievements that have gone on. I went to Ecuador in 1999 when I was a small child. They had just switched to the US dollar as their currency. This was the height of free market policies. Privatizations were going on. And I got off the airplane. I saw crowds of just starving people. Well, I went back to Ecuador in 2013 for the World Democratic Youth Festival, and it was like a totally different country. What Correa and the Bolivarian government had done in Ecuador had just rapidly transformed the country. They have public control of oil, public control of major heights. Correa, now his successor, Lenin Moreno, who was just elected, they are moving the country towards socialism very rapidly and raising people out of poverty. I mean, it was just kind of amazing to see what had gone on when, public control, they'd seized control of their own economy and begun working in the interests of their own country, not the interest of these Wall Street global monopolists. And for a long time, this kind of global setup of capitalism, you could say that it benefited average Americans, right? The global monopolists, they were bombing Korea and bombing Vietnam, and we average Americans, our lifestyle and our standard of living was increasing. But now we can see that what they've done to so many third world countries, they're now doing to places like Pennsylvania and Ohio and Wisconsin and Michigan. And so many parts of the United States, we've seen that these global monopolists have destroyed the standard of living. The jobs have been eliminated, and we're seeing really the rise of what I like to call a low-wage police state in the United States, where our wages are going down. The next generation is living in living conditions nothing like what their parents had. But at the same time, we're seeing a huge level of police state repression, people kicking down doors, police officers killing people and not getting away with it, the NSA listening to our phones. We're seeing capitalism in decay in the United States, this free market system where we let capitalists make money off of everything. I mean, how rational is it to have prisons for profit, right? When a private company is getting paid for everyone who gets locked up, when they're contracted by the government and they're getting paid for every person who gets locked up, what is their motivation? They want as many people in that prison as possible, right? This is not rational. This is not sane. And this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with kind of an out of control capitalism in the United States at this time.